Is 8:44, 16 before the top of the hour here on Mom FM. Joining us again in the studio, Matt from Erin, Doan, State Farm Insurance. Matt, good morning to you, and thanks for coming back in.
Good morning, Chris. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And let's talk about some responsibilities of landlords and as well tenants, especially when it comes to preventativeness for insurance-related incidents and all of that stuff, right? Because, if something breaks down and damages the items, well, there's insurance for that, for renters' side of things.
Sure, yeah.
But it could still come back on the landlord, too, for not keeping up on those items, right?
Possibility of those things. Yeah, accidents can happen, deterioration happens, things wear out. It's a common issue.
Yeah, and let's we'll go over it over the next couple of minutes. If you're just joining us, you can watch this segment on our Facebook page at WMOM, as well as our YouTube channel 1027 WMOM on YouTube, or streaming live there. And over the next few minutes, we'll kind of dive into this and hopefully answer some of those questions in regards to both sides, because you do hear some of that vented online from time to time, Matt. You know that you have something that comes up and says, my landlord hasn't done this, and they say that it's our responsibility, but it's their responsibility. The biggest thing from what I've read on information on this, Matt, is it's important to know before you even as you sign that lease, as you get into that agreement, you need to know what your responsibilities are and what theirs are. And in a lot of cases, I would assume that that doesn't happen, especially if it's like, hey, yeah, I've got a house, you want to rent it, okay, and you've got that kind of handshake clause there, right?
Yeah, haphazard situations like that, we want to say, hey, take a step back and realize that a lot of times this is a legal agreement, and there's a lot of rules surrounding it in most cities. Especially, I know Ludington here, we've got some rules about it, making sure that things are done well and done right. But anytime there's property involved or there's money involved, just take an extra minute to consider and use some caution there to make sure things go really well. Especially in this situation where you're talking about people's housing, where people live. I mean, that's really important to them. It impacts their job, it impacts their family, it can impact their health. And so we want to do that right. One of a great organizations in my county, Oceana County, or Oceana Home Partnership, now it's called Dogwood Community Center, Housing First. That's the mentality there. And we love that and how they support our area. There's groups up here as well that do that too. True North is up here. Housing First, making sure that things are done well. And rentals are a big part of that. And we know that there's a lot of people that they own a house and they say, oh, this is too big, I'm going to rent out some space, or I'm going to buy up that house that went for sale and have it available for rent and make space for more families that maybe they owning their own home is just really not for them, or maybe they're more transitional, and so making rentals available, it's a good deal for everybody. Make sure everybody's got a place to live. And
interesting enough, I mean, some of these facts that have come out in regards to this, or at least recommendations, is that if you are a landlord, is this really true that you could, in most cases, you want to budget about 50% of the rent that you're receiving for maintenance, for upkeep on that particular home or rental?
Yeah, shooting right down that path of what should landlords do. Let's take a huge step back real quick and just say, like, hey, let's talk about leases and making good contracts are there, but then also the planning ahead. So let's go straight to what you're talking about there. About what should good things for landlords to do? It's about their role and responsibility.
Okay,
having a good agreement, putting the pricing and the rent just right, but planning ahead on like maintenance and taking care of stuff, having a mental and financial plan of hey, this is for the long haul. And you just mentioned taking aside 50%, price your rent correctly for the market and stuff, but plan that it's not just to pay your taxes. You got to have a long-term plan for making sure that you can keep that home up to date for your current tenants and for your future tenants. And hey, you got to invest in your properties to keep them up and make them usable.
Do you think and I use the word myth, but is there even misconceptions from both sides when it comes to that agreement or to that expectation, I guess? Do you mind taking it from both sides? Let's take it from the landlord side, some sort of misconceptions in regards to their responsibilities.
And there can always be misconceptions in any relationship where communication is not really great. Misconceptions can occur. And so that's where, especially in this situation, we're talking about landlords and tenants trying to get along and take care of a particular piece of property. A good lease is going to be your best friend. Landlords, there's plenty of sample leases available online that you can then tailor to exactly what you want to have for your property that you're offering up. Read it carefully. Make sure that everything that you are expecting is not just common sense, so to speak, but it's actually written down.
Yeah.
Things like, what do I expect from the tenant? When is the rent due? What things are tenants definitely allowed to do, definitely not allowed to do, some of those hard things. Be willing to talk about it with the prospective tenants because maybe some things are a little bit out of line with the area. Anytime you make changes, make sure everybody initials and signs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
you want to talk about it from the tenant side too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tenants. Read your lease. Definitely make sure before you sign, before you move in, that you've read that whole thing. You want to be aware of what your responsibilities and rights could be, because there may be some things that come around in social media or general conversation that some people think are true, but might not be true for your property that you are moving into or living in. So read that lease very carefully. Make sure everybody's upfront about it. And if changes need to occur, be willing to talk and get that signed, get it initialed, make sure everybody's following the rules there.
We're talking with Matt from Erin, Doan State Farm Insurance this morning about responsibilities of the landlord and the tenant this morning. Some of those responsibilities in regards to the landlords required to fix or repair anytime there is an issue in majority of the cases, such as, visible mold, pest removal, major plumbing issues, heat and electric, hot and cold water issues, property functions, including appliances, structural integrity. Obviously, that's important. And any issue that indicates that the unit is not habitable. That makes sense that is a responsibility of the landlord, right?
Sure. I mean, the structure is theirs that they're offering up as a place for people to rent to live in. And so taking care of that property, if a landlord wants to think about it, like, hey, what are the things that you want to make sure are in good order before anybody lives there? And take care of those things. I once heard a rule of thumb that if it involves a tool, it could be your responsibility as a landlord. Definitely not things like
go ahead.
Plungers. Sometimes tenants can unclog their own toilet in some cases. So minor things, replacing a light bulb, that could be a tenant's responsibility. Simple, small things like that. But any place where hey, you as a landlord would really not feel comfortable with somebody else doing it, plan on taking care of it.
Well, and that protects both parties too, because you as a landlord, you don't want that tenant just diving into that fix-it project and creating a worse issue, right?
That's a valid point. Some tenants are very skilled and have the ability and capacity to take care of those things. Talk with them about that. Tenants, talk to your landlords about it. Good communication about taking care of those items. But you make a great point. A landlord might want to be sure that, hey, if someone else does this work, is it going to be done right? So hiring some of those things out covers your end on liability as well.
What about appliances, though? When you think about it,
sure.
Or usage items everything's basically usage. You're walking around on the floors, you're turning on the lights, so on and so forth. But when it comes to like a dishwasher, a refrigerator, those items, does that ever, do you think, in some cases, land on the renter, the tenant's shoulders at all, or should those items always be landlord responsibilities?
Normal wear and tear should absolutely be a part of anybody's mindset as they're offering a place for rent. So landlords knowing about it, tenants being aware as well. Anything that's excessive, certainly, you guys need to come to an agreement on who's taking care of each of those things. But appliances may or may not be included as part of the apartment's lease as part of the responsibility. So that should be spelled out in the lease. who owns the appliances, whose responsibility is the maintenance, and to what degree. Certainly some of those things can break down. And so you're talking earlier about setting aside a portion of each month's rent payment for those things. Got a plan on it. I know one place that I used to rent years ago, they would replace the dishwasher after every tenant, or every 3 years rather.
Okay.
I thought it was crazy, but they said, hey, if we do it, then we don't have to replace the floor. We don't have to call the plumber. We don't have to do this. Plus, it gets them another opportunity to get into that kitchen and make sure things look good and those cabinets and things are still staying in good shape.
And speaking of that, inspection's a big part of that mutual responsibility or mutual agreement, right?
Definitely. And big call out here. Hey, landlords, we get it. You own those properties. However, there are certainly laws about how often you're allowed to actually enter the premises and how much notice you need to give. Please, that is someone's home. Even though you own the structure, that's the tenant's place of residence. And tenants, you should know that as well. Landlords do have some legal authority to enter the premises, but should be spelled out in the lease, and they should give you notice unless it's an emergency situation. For example, if there's a fire happening, you want anybody and everybody to help suddenly. But to just come in and take a look around, they got to give notice. That's your place. You should feel safe in your own home.
Let's take it from the insurance standpoint too, because obviously Matt from Erin, Doan State Farm Insurance, that's your hat. When does it become the muddied waters, I guess, would I say, when it comes to claims and other issues? I would assume, one, it's when that isn't in writing, but do you see that some of the issues that arise is because one, they didn't have it in writing, and two, one believes it's their responsibility or not their responsibility, the other one believes it is?
I love that you brought that up, and there are some simple rules of thumb. If it's not spelled out in the lease, things should be spelled out in your lease agreement. Who has responsibility for care of the outside, the inside, certain maintenance issues, shoveling the walk, for example, clearing snow, things of that nature. But one of the rules of thumb that's out there is, well, was it inside or was it outside?
Okay.
Was it a structural negligence or was it just daily care negligence? And so that's where we can start to look at, is it the tenant's responsibility or the landlord's? My advice, granted, I get it, I'm the insurance guy. Everybody should have a policy just in case. And please plan for at least $100,000 of liability coverage at an absolute minimum, just to make sure there's something to take care of someone else who's been harmed while on that property. When
you're talking about policies from the landlord standpoint, what are some of those questions or some of those key things that they should have on their policy? You said $100,000. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Oh, certainly. Medical payments of coverage, $5,000 or $10,000 is very common now. Just satisfying those high deductibles for folks that might get injured on the property. Some of the apartments and houses that are available for rent, the landlord might own the appliances. You should have some personal property coverage in that landlord's policy, that rental dwelling policy, and just make sure that it stays sufficient to cover what you as the landlord actually own in that piece of real estate.
Okay. And from the tenant standpoint, is there anything different in regards to some of those?
When we're looking at the tenant's policy, we know they don't have ownership or responsibility for the structure in many cases, and so we're looking primarily at the personal property coverage. For example, for adults, we're usually assuming $10,000 to $15,000 at a minimum for your personal stuff. Kids might be a little bit less, maybe $7,500 to $10,000, just as a minimum, to make sure that in case your apartment suddenly goes up in smoke, which can happen. Then that way we can reasonably get you restarted wherever else you're going. Also to be included in a tenant's policy or renter's insurance is loss of use coverage. If you're suddenly put out of your home due to a claimable event, how are you going to pay the next month's rent? Have that loss of use coverage to put you up somewhere else, a hotel, a temporary residence, helping out with renting another place while yours is repaired. Loss of use coverage. Take a good look at that. I know the State Farm policies, it's pretty fantastic benefit. It's actually kind of higher.
All right, that's good to know. Anything we missed talking about? I mean, obviously we just kind of scratched the surface a little bit in regards to this, but it's going to be important for the tenant and for the landlord to have those policies that cover. It sounds like it's going to be important for that communication to be there from the start. Those things in writing, those things that need to be revised in writing again, and be able to have that open relationship there, right?
You know, I'm going to bang the old communication drum again, because having good listening skills and communication skills can be really, really important to make sure that relationship goes well. You may have a wonderful relationship with your landlord and verbal communication works well. In cases where it could get a little sticky or a little dicey, that's where I really love our phones, where we've got the ability to text through Messenger, through email. Email chains are great. In some cases where maybe it gets a little sticky, you want to have a clear chain of communication. Plus, that way, it's less likely that something would be misunderstood. You know, hey, we want the bathroom that's in the front to be taken a look at, not the one that's in the back. We would appreciate coming in on Tuesday, not on Thursday. Some of those things can be verbally get mistaken. So just doing those things and always giving good notice to everyone. You know, this is, again, it's someone's home. They should feel safe being there and have known that what's coming and going. So good communication and those things happening in a timely manner. And again, in writing, it's always good too.
All right, sounds good. Good information this morning. Let's keep that conversation going, and you can keep that conversation going by talking to the team there at Erin, Doan State Farm Insurance, located right there on US 10, north side of the road, about a half mile or so east of Meyer. If they want to get a hold of you, they can stop in. But other ways that they can reach out to you.
Yeah, we'd absolutely love to have people stop in. We are open. We see people in the office every day. We'd love appointments to be set too, if at all possible, just to make sure we can plan for you. But give us a call at 231-757-3115. Send us an email. There's Matt and Tammy and Heather and Pat and Erin, all at LudingtonInsurance.com. Great ways there. See us on Facebook. Regular post there too. We'd love to just connect with anybody. And we'd love to be in that advisor position. You want to just talk about some of your needs? Let's talk about them. If we have a solution for you, we'll tell you about it.
All right. Sounds great. Matt, you do such a great job at keeping us informed.
Chris.
We
Glad
appreciate
to be
it.
here.
You got it. It is Matt with Erin, Doan State Farm Insurance here on Mom FM. If you've missed any part of this segment, you can always watch it on our Facebook page at WMOM, and as well at our YouTube channel, 1027 WMOM. Make sure you hit the subscribe button there so you know when we talk about topics like this here on WMOM. It is 9:02. Let's kick off the 9 o'clock hour on your station playing your hit music. It is Mom FM.
Thanks for making us #1. I'm proud to be awarded the Small Business of the Year by the Ludington and Scottville Chamber.